if you are an aspiring creator, if you're entering in the space of telling a story and then having that story continue to be told in the event that you see success, that can happen in anything. Comic books, movies, novels, various writing, whatever, your world building, whatever it is. A lot of people don't seem to understand that my show's called For Canon's Sake, right? You can see it down there in the bottom right over there. For Canon's Sake is the name of the show. And what that is I'm talking about canon as it pertains to more so comic books, but that's not anything that's exclusive to comic books. But that was the influence for the name of the show. So right here, what we have now is with American media. And I think this is a reason why they're getting their asses whooped by the Japanese in avenues like comic books. But we've now got to the point to where, okay, brand started off one way. Now brand is just brand. And it's used to sell merchandise. So what happens is you have product of character, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. But there's nothing about them that makes them anymore. So various stories can be told outside of it, and then you can excuse it by saying it's a different universe or something like that. Because at this point, it's about product. And, you have your writers and people that want to be a part of these projects. They have their own stories that they want to tell through these characters, even if they don't make sense for the characters. Yeah, those are all a thing. But I think that you can't forget, let's say this, of what made those characters pop off in the first place. And I know it's very difficult to do that. Definitely for stuff that's been around for so long. But you look at even with y'all Star Wars. I'm more of a Star Wars normie. I probably know more than the average normie, but that was something that was done throughout the original sort of movies, and it was an element of storytelling and then obviously that kind of expanded upon even in books, and with the expanded universe it is that they had to kind of continue to hash out who these characters were. I think it's a gaslight when someone is like, well, none of that shit matters anymore. Who cares? I think that's more, it's for two people. Obviously those with bad intentions who just want to use the brand to advance their careers. But I think it's also a lot of those people that were late to the party and they're too lazy to get knowledgeable on it. I've talked about this, even your boy Zach, I think he did a video the other day. He takes a different angle from me, but he did a video the other day where he was like, I forget the title. Title was something like, you don't actually like superhero movies. You just like big budget visionaries, something like that. And he's right. Like these guys only like the idea of this stuff, but they don't really like it per se. Like they don't actually think about it. Have you talked to your average Marvel Cinematic Universe normie? These guys aren't really into this shit. They're not really into comic books and what makes a comic book character a comic book character. They're just into mind-numbing fun and high budgets and shit. And the idea that some shit has, an end credit scene and it'll expand and, oh my God, I can theorize and stuff. But they're not really into, well, this is a character. This is who the character is. That stuff actually makes sense. That doesn't make sense. This character is out of character if they're acting like that. All of that stuff, that doesn't even cross their fucking mind. So I think the advantage here that people have that are new creatives is to prioritize that stuff because that's what built it up in the first place. Now, you do have the advantage of this day and age because you have various funding methods and direct lines of sight with your audience. You don't have to sell it off your rights or your properties to bigger companies. So nowadays you can get rich off your own shit. You couldn't really do that. I think that's why a lot of stories have been sold off. I'd say this all the time. I think if we lived in this day and age, George Lucas doesn't sell Star Wars. The rights don't get sold to Star Wars. That shit doesn't happen. I think it's actually dumb. You have to be a talentless hack in order to sell off your assets nowadays, day and age, or lazy, but you just want to make a quick little buck and then bam, you move on from it. But nowadays, there's no reason to sell it off because you have a direct line of sight with your audience through social media, internet, and all of that. You don't have to do that anymore. So if you do that, and you build that shit up where people care, you're invested in the story. Because I think that's a real thing, man. I'm not talking about the consumers, like the consumers, the pigs, the MCU pigs that just fucking eat anything that they throw at them. That's not a long-term project. Those guys are going to move on to the next thing at some point. I don't know what the next fad's going to be, but let's say if it was Westerns, like Westerns made a comeback or some shit, and everybody now cared about Westerns again. Like they would move from the ashes, let's say that, upon which they leave after they killed this shit off, is we're going to be left with it. Those of us are going to be the ones left with it. The normies will move on to whatever the end thing is. But you have an advantage here if you just prioritize, I don't know, Canon. Something as simple as that. Something as simple as I have a universe. I have a world. I have these characters, and these characters are going to be developed in this way. And that's who those characters are definitively. Just something as simple as that. It shows the audience that you're invested in it. And they're more likely to spend money. Economic lesson. When you show the audience, the customer that is, that you care about the project, well, they care about it. They can pick up on that. I can't speak for the pigs, the consumers, not the cows, the pigs, the ones that eat anything. I can't speak for them. But for your just average, regular person, these guys, they care about that. Like when I know that the person, no matter, it doesn't even matter what the good or service is, but if I know that the person that's created it actually values it, they care about that. They care about the experience that the customer has. We pick up on that. And you're more likely to spend money on that person than you are some fucking guy that has no passion in anything it is that they do. Period. So now it's like, well, here's Bruce Wayne, and now he's flying. We covered this the other day. He's flying around and he sees a bunch of people looting, and instead of like throwing some fucking various tear gas or something, even if he had something else to do, breaking the shit up, seeing a bunch of criminals ransack the whole fucking place, he just says, well, they got insurance. That's not Bruce Wayne. We all know that's Bruce Wayne. And the fact that DC would put something out like that, it's telling the audience that, well, you don't care. You do not care. Bruce Wayne, Batman is he's just a symbol. That a platform that a story can be told upon. There's no definitive Bruce Wayne. And then when something like that happens, let's say that gets adapted into live action, what are you supposed, you get gaslit, right? Well, you're like, well, that doesn't make sense for that character. They never do that. Like I did. Maybe some of y'all addicted crackheads, I got to call you what you are, who insisted, the Batman was, you should have went to go see it. They have a guy that is akin to the fucking Zodiac killer, and he's going around calling himself Riddler. And the normies try to gaslight me and say, well, you should just like it because it's a different universe. Okay, guys, let's think about this. There's a guy who acts nothing like the Riddler, who is not the Riddler, but I'm supposed to believe he's the fucking Riddler because they said he's the fucking Riddler. You can't fucking gaslight me into fucking supporting that dog shit just because you want to turn your mind off for a couple of fucking hours. I'm not interested in this. That's your own business. That ain't fucking Riddler. It works to a degree, but it only works temporarily. So really, there's only one thing left to do here, and that's create. Create. And when you create, show the audience you value your stuff. I'm telling you guys, we're on the brink of a creative renaissance. And there is going to be a lot of people, not a lot of people, there are going to be a handful of people that if they just keep it fucking simple, they are going to make a lot of money in the art of storytelling. It's not going to be easy, but in a sense of like, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, if that makes sense. I don't want to use those synonymously. What I'm saying is that the game plan and the foundation is laid for you. You just have to go execute, right? Show the audience you care by telling stories, making art that stimulates their mind, not this mind numbing, which is what we're getting with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? It's just mind numbing at this point. They do shit for the sake of doing shit. That's really what it is. So if you give them something that's which art was supposed to do anyway, that stimulates their mind, but you show that audience that you actually value this shit. I say this with my company and what we're trying to do. I want, when you buy a book, for example, from my company, you own a part of history. Not just some shit that 20 years from now is just going to get retconned out of existence, or 20 years, 10 years, 5 years for that matter. You're going to see an adaptation that's completely different. And then I'm just going to pull a rug from under you and say, well, it's a different universe. That's fine. It's Elseworld. Like, it's just, that's why this character's retarded, act nothing like them, because it's a different, like, that's cheap. It's lazy, and it's insulting. I want you to own a piece of history. And I do believe that just showing your audience that you care about that shit as much as they do, you give them something to be invested in, they're going to reward you. They're going to reward you, because what we got right now is a bunch of passionless, milquetoast, mind-numbing, boring content that's being passed off for like AAA, that's being passed off for as like the upper echelon of good content, but it's fucking terrible. It ultimately is terrible. Standards have gotten down so low where people are like, well, yeah, sure, the characters don't act like they're supposed to, but it's not woke, and therefore I'm going to give it credit. Imagine that right there, that our standards have become so lowered, that now you look at it from the perspective of it's not woke and therefore it's good. That's the unfortunate thing of what happened with modern media and modern entertainment, is that it's gotten people convinced to accept literal shit. The creators, use that term loosely, have reached in the crack of their behind and pulled out a wad of shit and then handed it to you, and they expect you to pay for it. And you accept it, even though you know it's shit. That's unfortunate.